Hi and welcome. If you work with Spring Framework, you are probably familiar with the concept of dependency injection, right? But did you know Spring offers you 3 ways to get a dependency injected? In this video, we are going to break down each one of these and see when to use each one. Let's get started. So here we have a simple project to see each one of the 3 dependency injection methods, which are by attribute, dependency injected by attribute using the auto-order notation, through the setter method, and through the constructor. But before getting deeper on each one of these, let's take a general look on the project to understand what's happening and what the difference between each one of the methods. Okay, so to start, we have a very simple order model here. We are designing orders API. So this is pretty simple. We have an ID, description and price, constructor, and getters and setters, and that's it. And we have a service layer, which returns a mocked list of orders, right? So here we have 3 controllers. Actually, they are the same, exactly the same code, but the only change is the way the service layer is injected. Okay, so the first one is attribute. You probably already know this one. You probably already use it. This is very, very simple. You just need to annotate your attribute with the auto-order notation, and you don't need anything else, and everything works. Let's take a look on this. So here, this controller in specific is listening on /orders/attribute, /orders/attribute, and it works. It returns the mocked list, right? Cool, it works. So I can commit this code. Actually, you should avoid 100% attribute injection. Why? Because by doing this, you are requiring Spring to use reflection, right? And to run against the encapsulation concept. Look, here our attribute is private. And whenever we have a private attribute and we want the external classes to interact with it, we need to expose getters and setters, right? That's what encapsulation is. And when we do that, in specific, you can see there is no getter and setter for this one. So it's totally private. So you are requiring Spring to use reflection to run against the private modifier here and inject like the hard way to inject the attribute here. This makes your class really hard to test. And again, you are requiring Spring to use reflection, and that's not breaking the concept of encapsulation. So you should avoid every time, everywhere, in every project, you should avoid this kind of injection. Okay? The second one you're going to see is to the setter. I need to make a call out here. I won't show you that it exists, but I code in Java for 15 years, and I've never saw, a setter injection. So I will just show you that it exists and why and when you could use that. But my advice is for you to just forget about it. Okay, so here we have the auto-order notation on the setter, which is way better than the attribute one because you are using the encapsulation, right? You are exposing a setter method to Spring. And it's okay, you're not requiring Spring to use reflection. So why don't you use that? Actually, by doing that, you do not guarantee Spring is going to inject this. How so? By using the setter annotation as setter injection, you are saying to Spring like, oh, okay, actually this dependency is optional. I don't need this dependency to construct my object, my instance. So, you can, because as you might think like you are coding a regular code. You have an instance of something and you have the setter methods, right? What makes you obligated to call these setter methods? All of them. Nothing obligates you to do that. So that's the idea. You are not obligating, you're not requiring Spring to inject your dependency. So it's useful when your dependency is optional. I don't like that. So keep that in mind. Okay, it exists. It can be used when your dependency is optional. Again, I've never saw an usage for that in the real world. Okay, it might have, but in my experience, I didn't saw ever. The third one and the most do way is constructor by constructor. This is way more natural. Like when you are learning object-oriented programming, you know about instance, you know about constructor, right? And whenever your constructor requires an argument, it's like it requires an argument to be constructor, to that instance to be constructed, right? So it's the regular way that the Java language works. So Spring works smoothly with that. You are not requiring Spring to use reflection or to go against encapsulation. But the opposite, you are asking Spring to work the way the language was made to, right? So, oh, sorry, I didn't run to the setter one, right? So let's take a look if it works. I might apologize. Here's the setter. We can see it's listing on the setter. And it works the same way as the attribute one, right? Pretty much the same result. Okay. And now the constructor one. One very nice thing about the constructor injection is that you can tag your attribute as final. Even though you remove that, IntelliJ says to you, this can be final. And this is really good because for readability, for VM or whatever, like, oh, this won't going to change. This is a final attribution, right? Through the constructor. So it works really good, like really great for things like services and so on, repositories or whatever you need. In any way, you need that dependence, and that dependence won't be changed in the future, right? So this is a dependency in general. And let's take a look on this. You can see you need to declare a constructor here. If you are using Lombok, you can, I don't have Lombok on this project, but you can done something, use the annotation like required args argument that will generate this constructor for you. That's all that this annotation does. So let's take a look on this. Let me just rerun because I changed the code, right? Constructor. Okay, it ran. But one point here is that, can you see the auto-ride annotation here? You don't need that. You just get rid of this and let's run again. Again, because this is the way the language is supposed to work, right? So you don't need to say, hey, Spring, please inject the dependence here on the constructor. It's not like, it's obviously, right? You are exposing a constructor with an argument. This is required. So you don't need to ask Spring to inject that. Spring can understand that, oh, you are exposing a constructor with an attribute, with a dependency. So I need to find a way to inject the dependence for you in order to create this bean. It's just the way things works. Let's run that again, and ta-da! Everything works. So let's compare once again our solutions attribute injection. It's clear, the code is pretty clear, but you should avoid this 100%. Why? Because it goes against encapsulation and it requires Spring to use reflection to inject the dependency on your code and make your code really harder to test. The other one is setter. One point here, you can't make this final. Yeah. Variable order service might not have been initialized, right? So not good. The same applies for the setter one. You can't make this final because again, you can't obligate anybody to call your setter. It doesn't make sense. So that's it. So the setter one, you annotate your setter method with authoroid, but again, please don't do that unless you are 100% sure of what you're thinking, what you're doing. Because again, in 15 years of experience, I've never saw anything like this. And the most very great, super good way to do that is by constructor. You don't even need the authoroid annotation here. And looks like if I remove this, it will be like pretty Java code, right? We are not asking Spring to inject that. Spring will understand that it needs to be injected, right? And yeah, that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed as much as I did. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and click on the bell icon. It doesn't cost you anything, and you will be notified whenever I publish another video. And by the way, I just wrote a new ebook, a new free ebook about how can you structure your Spring Boot project into packages in the right way, right? Because when you start coding, you're like, oh, I will create a constructor package, a model, and whatever, and you start working, and the project is getting bigger, bigger, and bigger, and by the end of the project, your project is a mess. So how to avoid that? That's the ebook. I will let the link right here or here or here. I don't know wherever it will be, but that's the link. Okay, that's all. See you on the next video. Bye bye.